Howdy y'all, Banjo Ben here, Banjo Ben's General Store, along with Jake Stogdill, the manager here at the General Store. And today we're doing another table talk, this time on the subject of...
satin versus gloss finish.
On guitars.
On guitars, but the same general principles probably apply to all varieties of instruments.
Yeah, maybe so. And other things too that might have a glossy finish.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Like automobiles.
Yeah, maybe so.
No, it's not. No, maybe.
So... we get this question sometimes. In fact, you just got it this week.
I did. That's what gave us the idea.
Yeah. And the question specifically was what?
What is the difference between a satin and a gloss finish? What does that do for the instrument?
Exactly. So it's pretty easy to see the difference visually, right?
Yeah.
I've got the satin.
And I've got the gloss.
Yeah. And you can see the lights of the stage in the gloss. And this satin, you're just seeing more of the wood grain and not a coating of finish. But, you know, I'm curious too, Jake, as far as what those sound differences might be. Let's talk first about the price difference that you're often going to see, right?
Sure, yeah. There's three differences. Price, kind of what you might call a mechanical difference, and then what does that do for the sound? And so the satin finish is always going to be a little more affordable because it's less of a process. Literally how you get to a satin finish requires less layers, less polishing, less labor, right?
Yep.
And then to go from that to this, you have to, you know, sand and polish and new layer and sand and polish and new layer until you get this beautiful, glossy, shiny finish, you know.
And that doesn't mean that the satin guitar has no finish.
No, it's
right?
got finish, right?
So the wood's
less
protected,
yeah.
and it's covered over with a finish. It's just not to that degree.
Correct.
So on guitars like this, not to put you on the spot, but do you know offhand about what price difference is between these two models?
Usually usually it would be anywhere from around $100 difference.
Okay.
But to be like, you know, fair, we're talking about two great but more economy model guitars. We're talking about the Eastman E1D. That's an E1D, and this is an E1D Deluxe, which is the glossy finish.
The gloss.
If you get into higher tiers of instruments, so to speak, those differences can, and not all, you know, a glossy polyurethane finish is cheaper than a glossy lacquer finish is cheaper than a glossy hand varnish finish, you know, so there's nuance there, but generally speaking, glossy is going to be more. Sometimes it's not huge, like in the case of these. Sometimes it's a lot.
I think the interesting thing to point out here in this discussion is that most people, when they think about the differences, they're thinking about the visual differences, right? And so people are weighing, well, should I pay really that much more for something that just looks prettier? I'm probably going to scratch it anyway. Yeah. But we're here to tell them there's an actual sound difference and tone difference. And so let's turn to that.
Sure. Yeah, and in that kind of line of logic, I would even argue it's not necessarily objectively better or worse than either way. Like some people we sell a tremendous amount of satin instruments because people like the simplicity of the way it looks, and generally a satin instrument's going to sound a little warmer, and they like that, you know. So.
One of my favorite mandolins to ever come through the store, we get one per year, is a Pava satin finish.
Satin finish, right?
Yeah, and it's so warm and beautiful. Yeah. And that's what I prefer on her mandolins. Actually, I've never played a glossy one, but I just can't imagine improving on that Pava satin.
Right.
Okay, so there's going to be some subjectivity there.
Sure,
instruments.
Yeah, but there are objective differences. The point I was making, I guess, is that it's subjective as to what you prefer.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So objectively, I would say, you know, the satin finish is going to be a little warmer, a little more resonant. That comes at the cost of, if we're going to compare that to the gloss, of a little bit of clarity and definition and cutting in the mix, a little bit of sparkle, a little bit of focus, you know. So it's kind of, you know, depends on what your application is.
You know, could you compare it to, and not everybody would get this comparison, would you compare it to kind of a rosewood mahogany type discussion even?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. It definitely, yeah, I think that's a fair comparison. Yeah. Because with these two guitars, they're the same guitar.
Right.
Just this one's just got the shinier finish. When these started life, until they got to the finishing process, they were the same on the production line.
And we're going to hear how they sound different.
Right. Yeah. But they're all wonderful. I mean, you know, there's no right or wrong answer, like I keep saying. But a lot of people, if they sit in a room by themselves, they might even prefer this one, the satin, because it's warm and it's rich and it fills the space and it's resonant and it's breathy, you know.
Yeah.
And then they go to this one, and by comparison, if they're in a room by themselves, they might think this one's a little more nasal and focused, stuffed. But as soon as you get in a jam of 6 or 8 people or on stage, that opinion often flips.
Yeah.
Because what the gloss finish does really well is adds that focus you need to cut through a mix.
Right.
So, you know, they're both useful, they're both great, and we're kind of splitting hairs a little. They're both going to sound good.
Exactly.
You know, so.
Yeah, and the difference between guitars and mandolins may be a little different too, maybe not as noticeable, and just different qualities come out in the satin versus gloss.
Right.
Okay. So what do you prefer?
Being a jam guy and being a band guy, I have to go gloss.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I can only have one. That said, I don't only have one, and I have several of each because I love them both.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, not to try to weasel out of the question, but if I had to pick for the actual application of playing with other people, which is to me my most favorite part of music, the gloss just gives me a little more distinction in the mix that I find useful.
Is it related, this subject that we're talking about, is it related to the big to-do that people make over vintage Martins and such that have been oversprayed and refinished? Is that more, is that really having to do with the tonal qualities and the things that we're talking about, or is that more just, well, it's been altered from its original state?
I think in those cases it's more that it's been altered from its original state. To the way I would view that, it's the reason it devalues the guitar is because the thing with an overspray is, it's like, well, was that professionally done by someone really good with a high quality finish that was original? Like, was it a nitrocellulose finish like what that guitar should have had? Or did they get some like dollar shellac from Walmart and paint it on with a paintbrush, right? So there's a wide range of what it can mean when something's been sealed again in a vintage Martin. But that's an interesting point because a lot of those old guitars, they start off life as this beautiful, shiny guitar. And, you know, here we are pushing almost 100 years later to what a 30s Martin would have been made. All that finish is worn completely off, and they sound amazing, you know. So
you would not want to refinish them.
No, you
not
wouldn't.
only because of the value of the originality, but because of the tone. Why would you touch it?
Right, exactly. But in that too, again, you deal with instruments. You deal with all kinds of these sliding scales, right? Because I just said between these two, I would prefer this one because of those little extra qualities I find useful in a band. But I would prefer a pre-war Martin in general to this, not because I could sell it and buy 100 of these, but because it just sounds so much more. Just every tonal aspect to it is amplified, and it could have all the finish worn completely off of it, you know. But at the same time, that guitar's had 80 to 90 years to come into being a musical instrument. And that makes a big difference too.
So many variables. Makes it a living thing almost.
It is, yeah. But if you're comparing in general, everything being equal, two of the exact same thing from an equal starting point, these are the differences, right? And you mentioned mandolins earlier. I actually, when you asked me the question on guitar, I said I would probably prefer this. As you well know, the guitar player in a bluegrass band is at the most disadvantage as far as being able to cut through and be heard. It's kind of the muddiest instrument. It's got the lowest voice, you know, outside of the bass, which isn't doing much soloing. But all that aside, it's those extra cutting and sparkling qualities the gloss gives me that I find useful. I don't need those on a mandolin because a mandolin by design is so much more cutting in the mix anyway. So on a mandolin, if you ask me the same question, often I like the satin. I like what the satin sounds like in a mandolin. You know, so, but certainly there's no, I've never played any quality instrument, whether it's made one way or the other, and didn't like it because it was a satin or a gloss finish. You know, there's value in all of it, and like I said, we're really getting into the weeds with the differences. the most common person experience would be to come in and play this guitar and, wow, that sounds amazing. Then they pick that one up. Wow, that sounds amazing. You know, and that's, it just depends on how far you want to divide it, right?
And it depends on your budget. If you're wanting to get into a certain level of guitar and the Satin Finish offers you the ability to afford it, then don't feel like you're sacrificing too much by doing that.
That's a great point. Like, if I had to go, so that's a separate question, right? But these are fun little thought exercises. If I had a choice between a $600 one of those or a cheaper quality but equal price gloss instrument, I would probably go with this.
Right.
Because it's a better quality instrument.
Yeah.
You know, so the finish isn't everything, but we're trying to compare apples to apples as much as we can with these two at least.
Well, let's see if we can hear the differences.
Sure.
Between the gloss and the satin. You think it's best to start with that gloss?
Either way, whichever one you want to go with. Whoever starts first, I think the same person should play them both.
Yeah, let's have you play them both and play similar things on them. We're going in through this ear trumpet. That way we get as much carryover as we can.
Okay. And then this is the satin.
A little bit more on that one now.
Okay. See, so almost exactly what we talked about to my ear.
Yeah,
is that
me
your,
too. Me too.
Almost even to the point. You remember the comment I said, "By yourself in a room." Many people. I preferred this one probably. It's warmer, richer. But in a mix, this is the extra sparkle this has is really helpful.
And where you can really distinguish the differences is when you're playing rhythm and strumming the chords versus the single lines. I could hear it in the single lines too, but probably folks watching there on their devices, it's that G chord and that rhythm that.
Right.
Yeah, but it's very, very evident in the room.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool, man.
So if you guys can't tell the difference, you just have to believe us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, when you're looking to purchase an instrument, though, these are important questions to ask. A lot of times people just think it's only the looks that you're dealing with when it comes to the finish, but it affects the sound too greatly. And, you know, that's something that you could call us on. You could call us and say, hey, I'm looking at the E1D. What is y'all's opinion? Or can you give me a sound sample of the varnish versus the satin? And of course, we can point them to videos just like this too. But we're happy to provide that for you and give you as good a representation as possible to make the right choice before you purchase. Very good, Jake.
Ask us no questions and we'll tell you no lies.
That's right.
Or I won't. Ben.
That's why you don't let me answer the phone.
Yeah.
Hey, thank y'all for supporting Banjo Ben's General Store. We're here to help y'all with all your instrument and accessory questions. Visit us online or give us a call at 833-BANJO-BEN.